Hello, 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 and welcome to part two of our podcast on the American elections. Together with me again, once again, is our friend, analyst, and election enthusiast Mohal Joshi. I say election enthusiast because Mohal and I probably talk about elections more than a lot of people might wonder how well we convince ourselves that at least we can get it right better than many of the pollsters. So, but
Yeah,
how much do we get it right and how far have we fallen?
for the
I
India crowd, I strive to be better than Yogendra Yadav, just for the India crowd.
Yes, and he also talks very softly. So for all the India crowd, this is especially for you. But jokes apart, let's talking about what's going on in the in United States right now. What a crazy time, right? But
Yeah,
before we get into the, and I'll tell you the order of the podcast. We want to talk about the three states we left out last time in part one, namely Wisconsin, North Carolina, and
Nevada.
Nevada. Thank you. I keep forgetting Nevada, but Mr. Trump hasn't, and we'll tell you why. Uh, One interesting thing I want you all to know, and how is this election very interesting about that. In 2016, Mr. Trump doesn't win the popular vote, but he gets 46.1% of the vote and carries 30 seats, plus that one's 30 states, plus one electoral in Maine. And he gets 304 electoral votes, and Hillary Clinton gets 22 to 27. She gets 48% of the vote. Now I want you to take to 2020, and Mr. Trump only carried 232 electoral vote, and Biden gets 306. Trump's percentage actually went up from 46 point, I think 3 or 1 he got last time to 46.8. So there was a 0.7% increase. Hillary, who got 48.2%, so 6% of the vote, almost 5.8 to 6%, went to others. Most of that vote came to Mr. Biden. Mr. Biden got 3 or 4% of that others vote and went up to 51.3. And Donald Trump gets 46.8. And essentially both still carry 25 states. Mr. Biden carries DC and that one extra seat of Nebraska, and then most notably the swing states, and that's what swings the election. So I just thought it was quite interesting. So any initial thoughts, Mohal, before we start into this?
No, I think you elaborated well that 2016 was an outlier where the third party vote, which used to be like around 2%
Hmm.
at best, it swelled to I think about 6%, and I think which many people say like cost Hillary the election.
Hmm.
And interestingly, many people had thought that Trump couldn't expand his vote, which he did by a minor factor. But what ended up happening was that the third party vote collapsed again to like below 2%.
Hmm.
Uh, in like 2020, I think it was around like 1.8%, if I'm not
That's correct.
wrong.
Yes.
Uh, and I think he got the majority of the benefit, where I think two-thirds of that vote, or let's say three-fourths of that third party vote went to Biden, which made
Mhm.
him reach above 51%, which is giving him a clear 4.5% majority in the
That's right.
popular vote versus
Mhm.
just 2.1 for Hillary. So I think that made the huge difference, where it pushed Biden over 50% in many of the swing states and just netting him the presidency.
Correct. Correct. And that's the fascinating part amongst all this, right? Like how do you sort of meet in the middle on this, and that just makes everything even more fascinating on this. So, having said that, let's go straight into our discussion of this, and let's start with the swing state of Wisconsin. So, to give everyone a perspective, guess what was the margin with which Mr. Trump um, won Wisconsin in 2016 and lost Wisconsin in 2020? And the answer is a bare margin of 20,000 votes. He lost the state in 2020 by 20,000 or even 20,500 votes. He won the state in 2016 by about 20,000 votes. So that's how close it gets. But I want you to see this real quick, and I'm gonna then we'll go county
And
by county.
and I think it was like both times the margin was below 1%. So I mean, in 20,000, we did just say in the context of the size of the state. So it was
Mhm.
like I think zero point 0.6 and 0.8%. And interestingly, like while you bring that up, I just wanted to let the listeners know that uh, starting from 2000 election, which was the famous Bush versus Gore up till the 2020 election. Out of the
Mhm.
six elections, four of them have been under a person. The only two outliers were Obama, and that's what like where the appeal of the Obama with the Midwestern folks
Mhm.
really stood out, where he win very comfortably. But other than that, it has been a very pivotal swing state where the margins always, for some reason, come in under 1%. Even though, I mean, as we know, the coalitions on the Democrat and the Republican side have changed tremendously in the last quarter of a century approximately.
And this is not the first time it voted for a Republican since 2000, right? And before we get into the margins, I mean, look at how much Mr. Obama carried. Look at the blue here. He carried it by 7%, right? Almost 100,000. Look at
Hmm.
2008. The margin's even bigger. It's all blue.
Yeah,
I
it's like a
mean,
blowout.
yes, he carried it by 400,000 votes. 2004, Mr. Kerry. There's a little bit of red right here because Mr. Bush, and so Kerry ekes out a narrow
0.38.
15,000 vote. Yeah, 15,000 vote win. But this was the last time, right? I mean, again, Mr. Bush, it was like 5,000 basically votes. So it's. I mean,
0.22. I
yeah,
mean, it's like,
yes, exactly. Totally democratic vote. But in 2000 and 2004 was the only time it got close. So I correct myself. They didn't even win it in 2000. 2000. They just got
nah, nah. I
2004.
mean, the last Republican to win Wisconsin before that might be, I
Senior
think,
Bush. Senior Bush, I think.
yeah, senior. No, not even you can just go back. I think it might have been Reagan after all.
Yeah, I mean, we can take a look, but I mean,
Yeah,
we are getting into, we are again nerds
yeah,
about this, but we need to talk about the counties. So
yeah.
let's look at the counties, and I want you guys to look at these counties right here. um, and look at this blue, right? You see how there's a little bit of light blue and stuff, and then this is all deep red. Now let's look at 2020. Look at this county, light blue. There's more light blue blocks here. This is now a dark blue. This is all the, there is another blue county here. This is all the suburbia vote that Joe Biden pulled for the Democratic Party. Right now, what is that vote? And that's what I want to Mohal to go over. And I'm going to share like a county by county map of the 2020 results, and then he can extrapolate. So Mohal, all yours.
Yeah, so in the bottom right corner or the south east corner is like the city of Milwaukee, which is like the biggest population center
Hmm.
in the state of Wisconsin,
Hmm.
and bordering it are the three suburban counties, or famously called the WOW counties,
Hmm.
which is basically Waukesha, uh, Wisc- uh, sorry, my pronunciation might not be best. Ozaukee and I think
Washington.
Washington,
That's right.
Washington. So yeah, sorry, I'm some of these Midwestern counties, they have names which are like hard to pronounce. So anyway, so these ones are were like very solid Republican counties, but what we have seen is the general trend that many of the suburbs with the higher college educated population, they have been trending bluer. So Biden, by doing slightly better in the WOW counties, was able to run up the margins compared to Trump and Hillary in 16. That's
Mhm.
where they got the margins. And also the one blue county in the middle south of the, that's Dane County, where also there is a significant population, democratic voter population. The
Mhm.
one county that is kind of interesting is, so if you look in that northeast corner, it's
But
like
just,
a
just
long,
just
yeah,
pause 1 second. I want to show.
sure.
Look at the margins in Dane County, right? 190,000 votes almost. Look at the margins in Milwaukee, 160, 170,000. That's where the Democrats win the state. So the whole state can be red, but essentially these two counties, the margin alone is like worth about 300,000 votes, right?
Yeah, and I think Dane would contain the University of Wisconsin Madison, which
That's
would
it.
be like
That's it.
a college
Exactly.
stronghold. Yeah,
Exactly. So that's where the numbers come from. But
yeah.
yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, and then so the top on the top right, like where the word Green Bay is there on the map. Yeah, so that's Door County. Now that's the swing county. Now it went for Trump in 2016, but it switched for Biden in 2020. So this is the peninsula that juts out into the lake out there.
Mhm.
That's the swing county that a lot of people have been focusing on, and even that area in the northeast where Oshkosh and those areas are the Fox Valley, as they say. Those are the swing areas that a lot of people are focusing, and that will be the focus on election day and how to they are doing, because they might have some clues as to which way the state is trending.
Mhm.
Again, like the same thing as we mentioned in Pennsylvania, like Trump has to run up the margins in the rural counties which don't have a lot of votes, but it can add up quickly. And if you're on the Democratic side, you want to chip at the margins on those sides,
Mhm.
while the same reverse is opposite in the Milwaukee and the suburbs, where the Democrats would run up the margins and Trump would be looking to chip away at the margins, especially with the perceived movement towards non colored vote. But Wisconsin is doesn't have a huge non-white population, so this might be one of the states where it might be little bit harder, that if there is a little bit drift away in the suburban population towards Kamala Harris, and there's not enough non-white population where Trump could compensate to a certain extent, then it would be kind of a bit hard for uh, Trump to make up the margins. But you never know, since as we said, the all the elections except the Obama ones have been below 1%. So and I believe even Ron Johnson, the senator, in the midterm elections, he just squeaked out. I think you can look it up. I think it was like a 1%. Yeah, exactly. It was a 1% win 2 years ago in an off-cycle year, and even the governor Tony Evers, who's a Democratic governor. So in 2018, he won by, let's say, like a 0.5%, which is like super close. And in
Mhm.
2022, he won by just 3.4%. So which is quite, which just describes the nature of Wisconsin, that all elections are close and it could just come down to turnout. I mean, can you get your lake? Can you get your folks turned out? And especially like in the, as I said, the Fox Valley area, the Door County, the Green Bay, Wisconsin,
Right.
who will come out to vote? Will people switch their votes compared to 2020? So it might rely on all that.
Correct. And that's all. That's all. Those are things that matter the most in that. So we'll have to see how that goes. But moving on to the next state of North Carolina. Now, North Carolina is a very interesting state. If you had asked me about 6 months ago, when Mr. Biden was still the face, if North Carolina would be in play, and I would have said no chance, because quite frankly, Mr. Trump had a huge lead. It's one of those states that he carried in 2016 by almost 3%, 3.5%. He won it by close to 200,000 votes. And then, although Mr. Biden got it very close, because the turnout went from 65% to almost 77% in 2020, Mr. Trump still won the state by 1.5%. So he won by a relatively comfortable margin of almost 70, 80,000 votes. But he was made to sweat a little bit. But now, when if you look at the polling that's coming, in August, Mr. Trump was leading Ms. Harris by about 2 to 3%. Then she almost overtook by September, mid-September, by 2%, and now they're again, they were within 1%, and they're neck to neck. So, what do you think, Mohal, about North Carolina, and what's your sort of take?
Yeah, so I think there was a good rundown. I think was one correction I would like to make. So last time Trump won the state by under 75,000 votes. So it
Oh,
was
got it.
it
Sorry, yeah.
ended up being a bit closer than what the Trump side would have liked to be it at.
Hmm.
This has been a perennial state like which never switches, but it's always on the radar, saying like hopefully the Dems always hope that it switches. So I mean, Obama did win it in 2008, but since 2012 it has been in the Republican column
Hmm.
uh, always. What is changing is like the demographics. So there has been lot of influx of people from other states, especially in the research triangle, which is a very college educated and uh, population. So
Hmm.
which kind of tends to be like favoring Democrats in the recent election cycles. Now they have a very popular Democratic governor like Roy Cooper, who's like term limited. So they
Right.
have a Democrat race. So they have this split where the senators are like Republican, but the governor is Democrat. So they are on the cusp of switching over, but they haven't switched over. One thing which differentiates North Carolina from Georgia is like Georgia has a very central Atlanta urban core where Democrats can harvest a lot of votes. But
Hmm.
North Carolina doesn't have something similar, so it's kind of bit rural. But also, like we had the hurricane pass through, so there are a lot of open questions as to whether the western part, which is heavily Republican, can turn out at the same rate to give Trump the victory. So, and also like down ballot, the Republican governor has made some awfully atrocious comments and has a very dodgy history to say the least. And even like at some point, like I don't think Trump has been fully on board with the Mark Robinson, the governor. I think he's bound to lose by like at least double digits, if not by 7 8 points.
Mm,
So I mean, hope that Republicans hope that there is, that at least people will be okay with Trump, but they might not vote for Mark Robinson.
I
So they
see.
might be, but hopefully there's no up ballot impacts. That was the Republican hope, and the Democrats think that Mark Robinson hopefully can sink their chances. So it'll be like interesting to watch, but I mean this should be close. But let's see. I mean, what happens? It might come down to like turnout as most of these other states.
Right. So I want to show a little bit about North Carolina, and this is kind of interesting. I always find this very interesting because the North Carolina polls are showing a very close fight, right? Kantiki Takkar, as you would say. Look at 2016 first. Look at the red right here. All this is all suburbia. You see pockets of blues, those are all cities, right? And this is I guess the border is it's bordered with Virginia, right, if I'm not
Yeah,
mistaken.
yeah, yeah.
So that is a little Virginia is North Carolina is to Republicans or Virginia is to Democrats. That there's always this quasi swing state phenomenon, but ultimately it's always been a Republican state, right? So this is all and but now look at 2020.
Kind of हाथ आया पर मुंह नहीं लगा kind of, कि they
Yeah.
hope they always get it but they never get it.
See, this is deep blue. This is all light blue. So that is all Mr. Biden taking. Now, Mr. Trump ran up the margins right here in this deep red counties where he almost
Hmm.
got 70-80% of the vote. And that is the reason why these smaller counties he picks up the vote and he gets up. But look, it's 49.93 and 48.59. Right now they are predicted to be 48-48 or 49-48. So this will not be known for a long time. Probably it will be like 1 or 2 Eastern time by the time the results will be known. And again, this was a very close margin. But if you look at the history of the North Carolina, right, Mr. Romney won it by about 2% of the vote, even though Obama again ran up the margins here. And in 2008, I think that was the only time that a Democrat won, because that was, I mean, barely by like 12 13,000 votes. That was the last landslide election in America, so to speak. So, having said that, your initial thoughts and your predictions about North Carolina, what do you think is going to happen?
I mean, it's still like a 2.3% buffer margin. So, I mean, we don't know how much of influx of outside residents has come in.
Mhm.
Uh, Also depends on like there is whether is disaffection among especially black voters. Like
Mm.
certain pockets of North Carolina have a lot of black voters. So I think it will come down to turnout. But like the early voting has been very good for Republicans. But I mean, it's always dangerous to read early voting tea leaves because sometimes they don't cover. Because so the question is whether they're cannibalizing the election day vote to just vote early because Trump once used to completely oppose early voting is now a proponent of early voting, or is it like they have newly enthused or newly registered voters are showing up? So now both sides are making arguments, and I mean only time will tell. But let's see.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, let me show you something. And I was just trying to pull up that data here,
Hmm.
uh, and that is the most interesting. So, I was reading something from the New York Times polls, and New
Hmm.
York Times polls in the last sort of um, 24 hours, all the other polls are giving it +3, +1, +3, +1 to Trump. New York Times is giving North Carolina +3 to Harris. So what the heck happened? All the polls changed, and we'll come to that Iowa poll, and we'll discuss Nevada in a second. But can you just explain what the hell happened in the last 24 hours that all the polls changed?
I mean, for all election junkies like us, I mean, the Iowa Seltzer poll was kind of like a nuclear bomb, for a lack of better term. So Trump won Iowa by I think 7 or 8 in 2020, and everybody expected that the poll would be like let's say a +7, +10, maybe a +3. But it
Hmm.
shockingly showed Kamala Harris to be up by 3. Now, Ann Seltzer is, I know like pollsters get a lot of are bad mouth a lot because they get kind of get polls wrong all the time. But
Mhm.
what has happened, like Ann Seltzer is like the gold standard of polling. I mean, in India, we did have access for a long time until the Lok Sabha 2024 happened. So you
Yeah.
never know whether she, Ann Salzer, like who's like very respected in the polling circle. So now Democrats say, oh, this is a sign that people are moving towards Kamala late in the race, while
Hmm.
the Democrats are dismissing, oh, it's just like an outlier poll and it has nothing to do with it. So now it just throws into question everything you thought. And like, I mean, I guess I don't know about you, but at least my mind was blown on Saturday.
Yeah.
Like what does this
No
mean? It's
question.
just just like a, it's like so far left field that I mean, it's just too good to be true. And I mean, maybe if then there's a Kamala Harris landslide, if she's winning Iowa or she's like up in Iowa, though I
Hmm.
don't think she has been spending money or has any stops in Iowa recently. So, but I mean, the 6 week abortion ban which just went into effect this week, sorry, this year might have an impact on it, but I don't know. I mean, it's like, I mean, she's going to be the greatest soothsayer of this election or the greatest uh, outlier who like polled very badly. So.
Hmm. No, because again, ये हो क्या रहा है, right? That's the ultimate.
That iconic scene, like from जाने भी दो यार कि ये क्या हो रहा है, that was kind
ये
of,
हो
that
क्या रहा
was the
है, right?
moment.
That's the fear that we all have,
Yeah,
because the ultimate thing is you. I mean, elections are fun. Close elections are even more fun. And as an election junkie, I would love to have like a 2 a.m. sort of election call or something like that. But also you want pollsters to be credible, and from
yeah,
what we were seeing in terms of trends and what we've been hearing, what I've been seeing at local levels is completely opposite to what some of the polls are saying.
yeah, uh,
And if they are so badly wrong, then we are like headed for
yeah. We're in deep.
landslide by Miss Harris, that
Yeah, we're in
none
deep,
of us
deep crap. I mean, yeah, I mean, and I mean, maybe it might happen like a landslide for Harris, but we're in deep crap that how is every other single pollster like getting it wrong? Like if Iowa is moving 10 to the left, I mean, we should see it somewhere else. I'm not saying like she's not wrong, but then we have a deep problem. Like if every
yeah,
other pollster can't see a plus 10 movement, I
बहुत
mean, it
बड़ा
should
problem है
at
फिर.
least reflect in a plus 2, plus 3 nationally. I mean, and then I was just joking the other day with a friend that maybe like over the last few days, I mean, we have been kind of bored, and I mean, some of the even the election junkies are saying like, "What is this? Like every poll is basically tied, 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 tied."
Hmm.
And then even Nate Silver wrote an article that everybody's kind of herding like towards the similar numbers. So I felt like this was, and Seltzer say like, "This is hold my beer," response to Nate Silver
So,
that
so
okay,
now
I am
Nate
not
Silver
herding.
changed his numbers also.
Oh, I mean, he changes it like every day. He changes with the new polls coming. He's like a poll aggregator. So like,
Hmm.
and he has some also. It's not only polls. It's also some of the data, uh, like the macro trends he takes into account. Is what I'm
Yeah,
saying.
Nate Silver is the human version of poll of polls.
Yeah, 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 yeah. I mean,
So,
I think 4 years ago I said like he's a glorified aggregator. I know.
absolutely. No,
Yeah.
and we don't mean it as a disrespect. He actually
No.
aggregates it and stuff, and I actually refer to his polls all the time. But the fact is, he does do that before
Mm-hmm.
people are like, "Arey, ye kya bolte hai?" type
No,
of
he's not like going into the field and polling. He just like takes
correct.
the best polls, rates them, and then also has his macro environment. So a lot of it is actually macro environment. If people don't know, it's not just completely polls. So.
Mhm. But having said that, let's show you what is going on in Nevada. Another very interesting state, a state that the show we predicted would be a swing state many years ago in its finale, and people laughed it off. But hey, now the Veep is becoming the president. So, or is she becoming the president or the challenger? We don't know, right? So that's what I want you guys to talk about. Look at it now. Look at this. This is the margin in 2020, less than what, 40,000 votes,
think
barely like
20,000,
37 or
right?
no, 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 no,
Uh,
it's 670, so 34,000.
33,000. Sorry,
Yeah.
33,000. Yeah.
And again, the biggest margin comes from Las Vegas,
Yeah.
the
So
lead for the
one
Democrats.
thing you have to mention, I mean, geographically this looks very lopsided, but 70%, so 7 out of every 10 voters is from Las Vegas,
Exactly.
Clark County.
So that's what I was going to say. It's the whole the if you count, the Clark County is close to about a million voters, and the total number of votes cast are about 1.5 to 1.6 million. So here
Yeah.
you go, and then you have another huge chunk in Reno, where
Hmm.
Mr. Biden again gets about 10,000 vote bump, 200,000 votes. So all these counties you can see are very small, but Mr. Trump carries them
Hmm.
by 70-80% margin.
Yeah. And I
Yeah,
think Washoe is kind of that Washoe County where Reno is. I think is kind of the swing area that if
that's right.
Trump can win it or even reduce the margin, I think that's what offsets the big losses that happen in Clark County.
Correct. And that's what I want to sort of look at, right? Like if you look at these 2020 numbers, right? This looks like light, slightly darker blue, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then these are now you look at 2016. This is even lighter. And look at the margin,
Mm-hmm.
2.4. It's
Yeah.
25,000 votes. If this
Mm-hmm.
becomes scarlet, I can guarantee you, I'm making a prediction, Trump will carry the state. I
Oh,
mean,
definitely,
not
definitely.
even a question. The margins right here for the Democrats are about 2 or 3%. Trump needs a 5% swing. He's going to take this part and basically an extra 10,000 vote flip, and he carries the state. That's how close it is. But Nevada was never, and if you look at Mr. Obama carried it with 7 points, right?
Yeah.
His margins were huge. Again, if you
He's
go
just
to,
a different animal. Any state you look across the country, he just carries it by so much bigger
yeah,
margins than
but
any
I want to show
generic Democrat.
2004, the last time it Nevada went. Guess what
Yeah.
happened?
Yeah.
Reno
Oh.
was flipped. It went
Yeah.
scarlet.
Yeah.
So this is what Mr. Trump needs. If of and now it has a little bit more populations. Instead of 5, it went to 6. But Nevada
Mm-hmm.
is one of those weird states where if that number 6, right? If Trump gets it and then someone else gets New Hampshire, you have a 270, 268 type of election, and
Yeah.
with the 6-4 split. So, and we'll talk about that when we show you the whole map. So that's the funkiness with which we are approaching it. So your thoughts about Nevada, Mohal?
Yeah, so Nevada was hit the hardest by the COVID pandemic. I think they still have the highest unemployment in the nation.
Hmm.
So if immigration, I mean not immigration, sorry, if inflation and the economy are the biggest issues, I think this would be the best target state for Trump to pick up. Also, the movement among the non-whites, which be person of color like the Hispanics, and they would be the largest section to target here. Also, Nevada has, I think, one of the largest population of non college educated people out west and also across the country. So this is like kind of an ideal state for Trump to do well. Now
Hmm.
whether he can run over the margin. So now what has happened in Nevada in the last at least 20 years is that the Harry Reid machine, as they say, like they have like a group of Democrat operatives who can get out the votes, especially among the unions, the culinary union and the various unions that work in the casinos and the entertainment industry in Nevada. They've been able to garner enough votes to push them over the line, like with let's say it's around 2.5%. But this time, I think the culinary union uh, put out a SOS that things are not looking too good and like they could lose the state. So that shows the urgency of it. And interestingly, in 2022, after numerous attempts,
Hmm.
the former, I think, Clark County Sheriff, I think Joe Lombardo, was
Hmm.
finally able to wrest control of the Nevada governorship. After like quite of some time, there was a Republican governor, and
Mhm.
he won it. I think if you look at it, I think it was like 0.5%. So there is some hope that the Republican can win Nevada. That's as Joe Lombardo, and I think the Attorney General might have lost by like a very small margin, and even the Senate race in 2022 was very, very close. So
Hmm.
that
Hmm.
gives hope, and the additional economic anxiety, the high non-college educated, the high Hispanic count, I think that has given. And the early turnout from Nevada is one of those unique states where 70 to 80% of the vote comes in early. So
Hmm.
you could technically, as they say, read the tea leaves. And
Hmm.
Democrat are Republicans are doing very well, and we'll discuss it in the end closing, like regarding our predictions on more about Nevada. So
Hmm.
that's my um
No,
Nevada.
absolutely. But I see here is what confuses me, right? We talk about
Mm-hmm.
this, and I agree completely that that there are severe issues and stuff like contradicting issues within the states
Mm-hmm.
at
Mm-hmm.
play. Let's look at it from a little bit of a different perspective, that
Mm-hmm.
in the long term, how are we what is the goal for the Republican Party? Are they expanding their base, or are they staying, are they sort of getting 90% strike rate in my base? From what I have seen, the Republican Party has been making a strong effort to get Indian American votes, Latino votes, especially in even African American votes, but within in the Latino votes, especially in certain states, and especially in Texas and Florida, you're seeing a swing of almost 5-10% in some counties. So
Yep.
are we seeing a new Republican Party emerge, and are we seeing the tenets of that in Nevada, New Mexico, things like that?
Yeah, I mean, and all across the Sun Belt. So even as I wrote like on Mind Makers like 4 years ago, I think what's
That's
there
right.
is a gradual shift on the non-white vote. So the white vote is kind of shifting towards the Democrats a bit more, and
Mhm.
also there's also a class education split, right? So there are two realignments happening. One is the college educated moving towards the Democrats, and the working class or the blue collar working more towards moving towards the Republicans. And the
Right.
other thing is that what some people had forecasted that Democrats, because of the changing dynamics, I think this time we might be at first time the white population, voting population might be below two-thirds of the voting population. So
Mhm.
they might have an everlasting majority, because once you combine enough of the non-white vote with just bare enough, not barely enough, but a significant chunk of the white vote, you might have a everlasting majority.
Interesting. So, and do you see any cascading effect in the bordering counties of Arizona as well?
I think Arizona, I mean, if you want to move on to final prediction, I think Arizona is probably the safest state for Trump right now. I
Hmm.
would almost say like it's likely Trump at this moment. I think that even the Trump uh, team and like even like Democratic operatives would concede that Arizona is kind of out of reach for Trump right now. Sorry,
Hmm.
for Harris right now. Sorry.
Yeah, but I seriously don't know how Trump loses Iowa. So my question is, Iowa might flip because of people, how people, according to the pollsters, about Roe v. Wade, about the issue of pro-choice, being pro-choice, and I myself am firmly on the pro-choice side of the debate. And when I've talked to a lot of women voters, they've said the same thing, that they would be voting Miss Harris because of that decision. But the fact is, Iowa has the position that a lot of the old school conservatives or the Republican Party has, giving it back to the states, is not something new. And Iowa has continuously elected Republicans in spite of that position. So are we seeing a change? I don't know. I'm just asking questions, and that's what
I
surprises me.
mean, so what happened is like in the 2022 midterms, like a lot of the seats that Republicans should have picked up, I think the Democrat enthusiasm was quite a bit, which negated the large macroeconomic factors like inflation
Correct.
and COVID at that time.
Right.
So the question was that maybe it could move the national environment couple of points or maybe 2 3 points in every state. But the movement like the 10 which is been shown in this poll
Hmm.
is like I mean quite large, so we don't know whether there's something that we have all missed on the ground and the pollsters have missed on the ground, or it's just like a bad outlier poll where maybe they oversample the women, or uh,
Yeah.
I mean we don't know. It's very hard to say. I mean, so either, as I said, like she'll be like the most brilliant soothsayer who saw contrary opinion, or she'll have egg on her face, I mean, for a lack of better term.
या नो नो प्रदीप गुप्ता वाला डांस या प्रदीप गुप्ता वाला रोना होगा, बट जो भी होगा एंटरटेनिंग होगा, राइट?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Of course. But let's go to what we've been waiting for, guys.
Mhm.
Let's go for our predictions, right? So these are the toss up, and these are so Mohal, do you agree with the basic assumptions?
Yeah,
226 to Harris
yeah.
and Paul?
226 and 219 with 7 toss-ups and 93 electoral votes. Yeah, that is the base case. Almost
Mhm.
everybody, anybody would agree with this.
Yeah. So let's go state by state and see what
Yeah.
we are
So
doing.
let's go with the Sun Belt first,
Mhm.
and yeah, go from west. So and then just come to Nevada later on. So like Arizona, I think most of the polls have a very consistent but durable lead for Trump.
Correct.
I think even many Democratic operatives would agree that Arizona is kind of gone for her.
Bilkul.
So you could put it in the her column.
Mhm.
Next would be Georgia. Same, like I mean, there have been some polls where she has been up a point, but usually it's been a small but durable lead. I
Mhm.
would say uh, maybe lean Trump. I would say. I mean, not
Yeah.
likely like Arizona.
We
Uh,
well, yeah. So Arizona probably would be likely Republican,
yeah,
and
yeah.
and Texas and Florida, you can even say they are safe Republicans. Like
Oh
you
yeah,
can
yeah,
even
yeah. I
send them
mean,
Charlotte.
yeah, I think you
This-
don't need to worry about tech. If this Texas and Florida are in threat, then I think the election is completely gone at this point
Then
for
we are
the
looking at a Reagan type
Republicans.
result, Reagan 1.0 type result, where he won
Yeah,
California and New York both.
yeah. So
Um,
Georgia, safe but durable lead. Yeah, and then also Georgia has like a Republican nature. I mean, the Democratic winning it was kind of an outlier, but obviously the growing suburbs possesses a challenge. Yeah, I mean, I would say like maybe a narrow win for Trump would be on the cards.
okay.
North Carolina, I would say again like a
Leans
small, yeah, leans Republican. So at this point, I think Trump gets to 262. He's 8 votes short.
correct. It's 260 to 270. Now, I think we can safely give Wisconsin to Miss Harris. I think
Yeah.
it's many polls. Michigan also, now she's picked up a 2 or 3 point lead or a 1 point lead. Let's
Hmm.
just say it leans Democrat because it's
Yeah.
like Georgia of America, right? The Georgia and Michigan, like I said in the last podcast, how by default Georgia's character as a state is to go Republican, Michigan's character as a state is to
Hmm.
lean Democrat.
Yeah. Yeah.
2016, Michigan bucked the trend. 2020, Georgia bucked the trend. So they had
Yeah.
their one blip and stuff. So now it comes to
Yeah,
the
Wisconsin, I would say like there is still an outlier chance that it's 50-50. Lot of the polls, some are giving Republicans lead, some are giving Democrats the lead. But I still have like doubts because maybe Trump, I don't think is as well liked in Wisconsin. But hey, if there is a heavy turnout, or maybe if the Milwaukee doesn't turn out as well as before, and given the nature, it's only 0.5%. I mean, it could
Mhm.
very well go either way. I mean, technically it should be like a complete toss up, like, but yeah, I mean, we would just give it Democrat given the nature and the long history of Wisconsin out there.
quite
So yeah,
literally,
Wisconsin.
quite literally, कुछ भी हो सकता है.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But
Pencil. Yeah.
I want
Yeah.
to focus on one thing.
Mhm.
Look at the numbers.
Mhm.
Bottom line is, no Democrat president can go without winning Pennsylvania. If Mr. Trump wins Pennsylvania, the election is over. He will.
Yes, mostly, but no, there is an alternate path. So if let's say Trump wins Pennsylvania, she would have to win North Carolina and Nevada, and I think she would make it over the top. So if you put North
Correct.
Carolina
North
as
Carolina
likely,
and then
and
Nevada.
Nevada, so
Yeah,
she does have a path. So I think people have. I mean, obviously, the importance of Pennsylvania has been
no,
drilled
no, no,
into everybody's
no, no, no.
brain.
That's
Yeah.
this is where I want to bring in another thing.
Hmm.
She brings North Carolina, Nevada, and if he flips New Hampshire, the primary.
I have serious doubts about it, but yeah, I mean, some of the polls have been within one, but given the nature of New Hampshire, one good thing for her is, sorry, for him is that Kelly Ayotte, like a former senator, is running like 4 5 points ahead of her Democratic candidate as per some polls. So
Mhm.
if Trump can ride the coattails of, and usually it doesn't happen that way. It's always down ticket. It's never up ticket. Then I mean, if you have like a really red Republican environment, because it's very hard to see where Trump would lose like a Michigan and Wisconsin and Nevada, but he could still win a New Hampshire. Yeah, granted, if he wins New Hampshire, he might would be winning Wisconsin and Michigan and Nevada. It would be like a 7 state sweep at that point. So
That's
yeah, I
right.
mean, yeah, so I would entertain that idea, but I think the election is mostly Pennsylvania and North Carolina. See, if one person wins two of them, I think it's curtains for the other side. But
That's
if they are kind of split, then the game goes on. That maybe then you have to look at the states out west. So on election night, if they call, I mean, North Carolina should count its votes pretty quickly. Pennsylvania, yeah, with its late mail-in ballots, it might take a while, but if North Carolina and Pennsylvania are called for either side, I think it's almost curtains for the other. I don't see a pathway. But yeah, granted, like she has more. Uh, I mean, since North Carolina is kind of bit hard for her, her winning Pennsylvania, North Carolina is more pivotal than winning, because if she loses Pennsylvania, then she has to win Wisconsin, Michigan, and Nevada. I mean, if you can just shade North Carolina again to red,
mhm.
yeah, then it would mean that she would be at 257, so she needs those
That's what I'm saying. She can
19 votes.
for her. It's very important to win. So let me put it. Let me give you the other scenario. Say Mr.
Mm-hmm.
Trump gets 262, right? It's
Mm-hmm.
very likely that he'll win this. Even if he doesn't win Pennsylvania, he can flip Wisconsin and he can still
Yeah,
become the president.
yeah, yeah, definitely. Yeah, yeah.
The
It's easier
likelihood
for
of
him.
Mr. Trump flipping Wisconsin is much higher than the likelihood of Miss Harris flipping Arizona or Georgia. They are that strong Republican, and
Yeah,
that is
I would
the
agree
election.
with that assessment. Yeah, yeah,
And that is why you find so this is, I would say, the best route for Miss Harris to become the president.
yeah.
For Mr.
So
Trump, obviously it's Pennsylvania, and
yeah,
then
yeah,
anything else
yeah.
he picks up.
But winning Nevada, and I think I'll come to Nevada. So Nevada, the early voting, the Republicans who never lead in early voting are up by 40,000. Now John Ralston, who's the oracle of Nevada, and he always calls it, has hesitated to say that it leans Republican at this moment. But if you read between the lines, he is not very sure of a Democrat victory, unlike other times.
Mhm.
And I mean, he's supposed to release his final prediction in the next video. So, I mean, I will give it to Trump for now, but yeah, if he revises predictions, I mean, I reserve the right to even change my judgment on it. But for
Right.
now, I would just give a very slight edge to Trump based on the early voting numbers. But yeah, I will defer to John Ralston, who's been practically never wrong in Nevada. But Nevada gives him the extra insurance that in case North Carolina flips, he can still win it with Pennsylvania and Nevada if he loses North Carolina. But if he loses Nevada and North Carolina, then yeah, then Trump and Pennsylvania, then yeah, that Trump doesn't have a path anymore, you know.
Yes, Trump
So
does not have a path in that
yeah,
case. That's the situation where we see ourselves in.
but yeah, so I guess we agree with this 287, 251 for now.
Hmm.
Yeah, I mean there might be some polls where I think I still have.
No,
I
no.
mean,
So
I'm solid on most of these leans except my
no, no, no. But hold on,
two.
hold
Yeah,
on. Let me pause you because you get too much into numbers, right? So
yeah.
don't. I want to lead people into scenarios before we get
Hmm.
into full into numbers.
Sure. Yeah.
Uh, let's go a little bit Wolf Blitzer, then we can go John King.
Uh
Uh,
huh.
right. So let's look at the potential pathways. This is
Hmm.
Mr. Trump's the this is the best case scenario for Mr. Trump. He flips Michigan, Wisconsin, wins Nevada, Pennsylvania, all
Yeah,
the
all seven. So it's 312.
302, right? This is the best case scenario for Miss Harris. That means it puts her at
And
276.
North Carolina, I would
And
say,
North
like, I mean,
Carolina, if you want to
yeah,
add,
yeah,
but that
yeah,
is
yeah.
very
But
likely.
Arizona, Georgia, I mean, they are off the board for us.
They're
So she would get to 292 best.
That's right. So the best possible situation, even if she wins North Carolina, is 290 odd for Miss Harris. The best possible scenario for Mr. Trump is 312. If he
Hmm.
wins New Hampshire and causes a couple more upsets or something, you are looking at the biggest Republican shocker for that. And even if, let's just say, you change Iowa to Democrat, right? And Mr. Trump gets Pennsylvania, gets North Carolina, right? He still becomes the president. That's what I'm saying.
Hmm.
For Mr. Trump, he can afford to lose Iowa and win Pennsylvania, North Carolina, Arizona, and Georgia. He'll still be president.
Hmm.
Miss Harris can simply not afford to lose Pennsylvania. For
Yeah,
me,
I
that's
mean,
the real story.
her
Now
best.
go ahead. Now go
Yeah,
into the numbers.
yeah. So now, no, no. So the her best route is obviously, I think we mentioned in episode one, is the blue wall, winning Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania. Then she doesn't have to worry about the four southern or Sunbelt states in Nevada, Georgia, North Carolina, and Arizona.
Mhm.
So that's
Exactly.
why she has bit of an advantage that she relies on the blue wall, which is like been solidly Republican. There are these various scenarios, but her best path is through the Rust Belt, and Trump's best path is winning North Carolina, Georgia, and Pennsylvania, which gets him to exactly 270. So, Adit, what are your thoughts on the popular vote? Because that also been a lot of discussion over that. So, just to give a baseline, Hillary won by 2.1% and Biden won it by 4.5%.
Correct. For Trump to win the popular vote, he'll have to run up the margins in Texas and Florida and get to within 10-15% in California and New York. The likelihood of that happening are very less
Mm-hmm.
because there is no significant third party candidate. Jill Stein is not going to get more than 1% vote. There is no third front here. So, but if the country is moving rightward, if you are going to see Trump picking up New Hampshire and Nevada and stuff, there is a he has a legitimate shot at repeating this 2016 or getting even closer to that, but getting to Bush's percent in 2004 seems very unlikely.
Yeah, I think there is still, as I said, an outside shot of Trump winning the popular vote, but I think it's kind of hard. But maybe it might be less than Biden for sure. I have a sneaking suspicion it might be Hillary's delta, like 2.1 or even lower than that, probably. So that's why the election gets interesting, right? Because Hillary lost with 2.1 and Biden was with 4.5. So if she gets in that three margin or two and a half, then it's
Correct.
game on for Trump. And I mean, there's also an outside possibility. So I would say anything from like a +3 Harris to a +2 Trump, or
Hmm.
even a equal Trump. Like the some polls, mind you, I mean, it's quite mind-boggling. They have given a +2 Trump to in the national vote, which is kind of unheard of. That would be like a political tsunami. I mean, if that happens, then I think your New Hampshire and everything will flip. Yeah, I
नहीं,
mean, because
then
yeah,
we also, हमको मालूम है जन्नत की हकीकत, लेकिन दिल को खुश करने का गालिब ये है, या ख्याल अच्छा है. So
yeah,
it's that type of thing that everyone's, building their own khayali pulao. But if you
yeah,
ask
yeah,
me, Trump can win quite. This is Trump's election to lose again if the turnout can be ensured.
yeah,
Uh, but I will not disagree that Miss Harris has made up a lot of ground in the last 2 days. 2 days
yeah,
ago, it seemed like Trump had sealed this election, but the
yeah.
Democrats have started working with a huge vigor. And you have to be completely blind or willfully deaf to ignore that. If you have a position and if you have a party, absolutely, you're working towards a goal. So I get it, I have my full sympathy. But if you do not have a political allegiance and are an observer or something, look at that. I was watching an NFL game, and both it was Detroit versus Green Bay. So it's very interesting. Michigan and Wisconsin, both
Wisconsin.
swing states. Boy, oh boy, in between you had a bombardment of President Trump and Vice President Harris's ads.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
that tells me the election is alive and kicking.
No, I mean, yeah, I mean, you made a good point. I think in the early voting, also Republicans got out to a very good start, and even um, the the black vote in some of the states like Georgia and North Carolina was kind of lagging, which was not good for Democrats. But I think in the last few days they have made up a lot of ground. So Democrats are coming back strong into the picture. So the early voting is also kind of more balanced out versus like
But the
very
strike
favoring
rate is also
Republicans.
to be seen. If the
Huh?
Democrats don't get African Americans at like 85, 90%, and if even 3, 4%, 5%, 10% shifts
And also
to.
Hispanics. I mean, some polls shockingly are showing like equal votage. I mean, which is quite
I don't
shocking to
think we
me.
should be sure. I think a lot of Hispanic people are voting Republican. I've seen that in Texas, I've
Yeah,
seen that in Florida, so California especially. So no, I think it's very because there's the whole family value concept, little bit conservative on the religion side as well among certain pockets. So yeah, so it's
but the MSG comments also have turned off quite a few Puerto Ricans. I mean, there's like 700K Puerto Ricans in, for example,
yeah, yeah, I know.
Pennsylvania. So,
But
so,
again,
so
no, I have a question because
yeah,
I read
yeah.
so many New York Times. How many Puerto Ricans used to vote Republican?
I mean, I haven't seen the statistics, so I don't want to comment on it, but
No, but
wouldn't
that's
be
my
a lot.
point. No
Yeah,
one knows. No one knows the statistics.
yeah,
So
yeah, yeah,
because
yeah,
this is another problem of the media of jumping to play savior of. Talk to Puerto Rican leaders in Pennsylvania and see or something. Were the jokes sort of in bad taste or something? Yeah, I wasn't a
yeah.
fan of the
Definitely,
jokes, right?
definitely. I
They
mean, yeah.
were
Why would you make such a?
awful.
I mean, he should be vetted before bringing
Yeah.
somebody such controversial on the stage.
No, I mean he was controversial. I saw him on the Tom Brady roast, and he was funny. I mean, Kevin Hart was on the floor laughing when Tony Hinchlife's joke. So I mean, I probably they saw the roast and figured that he was popular on Netflix and brought it again. Nothing justifies a back. But the question is again that whole freedom of speech debate. You could have a very bad taste joke, right?
Yeah,
How does that impact an election? We don't know that yet
yeah.
because
I mean, we
people
don't
vote
know.
on very
Yeah,
funny
yeah.
reasons.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, also like so as I said, like the Democrats, they are I think picking. I think they saw the early signs that they were not doing well on the early vote, so they are making up lot of ground. And like the stuff like Iowa poll would have energized the Democrats on the ground. I
Right.
mean, also remember the ground game, right? So that's a big problem for Trump. So Trump has kind of outsourced it to the surrogates like Charlie Kirk and the Elon Musk pack. But like there were some reports that some of the people are just inflating the numbers to earn the money from this pack. So the Democrats are very well organized on the ground, much better than Republicans. So even if there are more Republican likely voters, but what if you can't get them? It's a turnout thing at the end, right? When you're talking about 1 or 2% margins, you cannot take it easy. So if you can't get people, I mean, it's kind of game over. So you could have a million polls, but it won't help you a bit if you can't get out the
Right.
vote. And also the women, right? So we're looking at a historic gender gap where like it could be plus 10, 15 among women and for Harris and plus 10, 15 among Trump. Now the thing is, usually the electorate is like around 50 to 48 in favor of women. But let's say if they move it to 55, 56, she wins easily, right? While if Trump can get her enough. So I think there was some Republican commentators on X mentioning that, oh, we need to get more men to vote at the polls. So there's a lot of cross currents, lot of factors. Like, so there are easily reasons where she could win if a lot of women come out to vote, or a lot of uh, like the what is the percentage of the white versus the non-white vote. So a lot of things to see. I mean, and obviously the economy and how he can win is basically if the economy and inflation is number one and number two, and immigration, then I mean he has a good shot at winning. So both sides have a decent shot at winning. I mean they have different topics they're strong on. I mean whoever can capitalize on their strengths can win. I mean, I mean, if I were give a cricket analogy, I mean, Virat Kohli might get a full toss, but if he misses and gets ball, you can't do anything with a full toss, you know.
You can't do anything with a full toss. Absolutely. So we'll see how it works. But fascinating. Thank you, Mohal, for joining.
Yeah,
This has been great. We'll do a part three, which is the results. Obviously, once the results
yeah,
come out,
yeah,
we
yeah.
won't do it on the day off. We'll take a little bit of while to, and who knows what the heck is going to happen on
Yeah,
the day.
I mean, like the counting. I mean, some of the Nevada ballots, they say they are going to let it come to for 3 4 days. I mean, and we
Yeah.
could be stuck for days. I mean, some of the states like they do count early. I mean, there's also a red mirage and a blue mirage. It all depends. Some states count the mail-in first. Some count the election day first. So you could have one guy leading and then the
I
other
would
guy
just
declare
wait
victory.
till at least 12 a.m. Eastern. At least 12 a.m. Eastern. If it's a
Oh,
close
I would
election,
saying like at
even
least if it's a close election, yeah, 12
but if it's
Western
not a close
actually.
election by 10 or 11
Yeah. So
p.m.
I think
Eastern,
what
good to
viewers
go.
should see is the margin. So if in New Hampshire, where I think Biden won by 7, so let's say if Trump is winning by double digits, or sorry, if Harris is winning by 10, then you know it's a bad night for Trump and he's going to lose the election. But let's say if New Hampshire comes within, let's say, 3 4, then you know that there's something going on and maybe Trump is making. Same for Virginia. I think Virginia was a plus 10 for Biden. So if it's plus 5 for Trump, you know that there is a rightward shift in the electorate. And also
Absolutely.
look out for Florida. But Florida is kind of biased because it's gone so red. But Florida would count everything in 3 hours and be done with. So I mean, and then
No, even Georgia. Georgia is supposed to count very fast this time, as
yeah,
Pennsylvania
yeah,
and
yeah,
Arizona is also just
yeah,
being told. But the
yeah.
other two,
Pennsylvania, except the provisional ballots, they should count early. So I think they're going to process the early ballots. In actually, funnily, in Wisconsin and Michigan, the state legislatures they were kind of split. The Republicans didn't want it, so there was a proposal to count the votes which come in before election day, to process them but don't tabulate them. But I think so. It's kind of strange. I mean, I think there's a good article on NBC News on the blue mirage and the red mirage where some states. I mean, I remember last time in 2020, like Ohio, for all places, was trending blue in the initial because I think they would have counted the provisional ballots, but then
right.
it became super red as the night went on. But like other places were opposite, right? Like Trump was leading up in
Yeah.
like
I think what you have
Wisconsin,
to see is
Pennsylvania.
look at the percentage counted, because that's a beautiful statistic that American media shows, that I hope Indian media also
Oh
starts.
yeah,
How
definitely.
much percent of vote cast counted, that will prevent all the craziness we had in Haryana. If you look at that percent, so say if it's 99% counted and Trump has a 3% lead, there is only 1% of vote remaining. Trump has
Yeah,
won.
yeah,
But if it's 90% of vote counted and Trump has a 5,000 vote lead and some ballots will be counted in the morning, don't just
yeah.
jump the gun and say khatam election khatam. Nahi, nahi.
I mean, it was funny in Haryana. They were talking about one narrative, and then half an hour they had to change the narrative. It was completely insane election.
Right. So, but wait, it will be
Yeah.
this is going
So
to be one of the most
I'll just
strongest.
run down quickly if you don't mind. So in North Carolina, the mail-in ballots will be reported first, casting a blue mirage. So
Mhm,
the in-person early ballots won't be tabulated until the polls close,
mhm,
but the vote percentage will shift towards Republican as election day votes get counted. So it will be like blue, I mean Democratic leaning votes first and Republican later.
mhm,
Georgia will report their in early person and mail ballots, so it will again be a blue mirage, and it
mhm,
will shift back to Republicans until now. Until unlike in 2020, remember in Georgia they just shut it down and then went home for the night. They are not allowed to do that. They cannot pause their vote counting,
correct.
and it was pretty close, right? Because only 12,000 they voted.
Mhm,
Pennsylvania, it's supposed to be like mail-in ballots again, Democratic blue mirage. So it's kind of weird. So they have the early mail-in ballots. Then you have your in election day votes. So it will be a blue mirage with a red one. But
mhm,
then there is also the remaining late arriving mail-in ballots. So it again might be blue. So it can be weird, like blue mirage, red mirage, and then blue at the end.
mhm,
Michigan, same thing. Like it's early vote is all in person, and then the mail-in ballots, I think, are kind of later on, because the I think the redder areas report first, and in Wisconsin everything is reported together. But remember, like that last time they had that crazy 3 a.m. dump of Milwaukee, which like 85% went to Biden, and suddenly Biden was from back, and it was like everybody had conspiracy theory. Oh, they did in middle of the night. So
mhm,
that's kind of early, and then I think Nevada is I think it should come pretty quickly because they receive 90% or 80% of their votes very early.
mhm.
So, but the late ballots, because it's kind of crazy that they will allow non-postmarked ballots to be counted for up to 3 days afterwards. So, I mean, who knows what kind of margin? I think so. I just hope that there is a clear election, so we don't have to keep counting for days on end. Otherwise, it's just going to be insane. So, anyways, this was a brief rundown on how some of these blue and red waves might appear, and people might, I mean, people, you might be on an emotional roller coaster. Oh, jeet rahe haar rahe, kind of, and
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
bound to happen.
No, no, absolutely. I'll be doing. I may be on a channel or so. Might be doing a live stream. So we'll be
Yeah,
talking, but it'll be later. But detailed, we'll have a detailed discussion probably next weekend once all the results are in and we know what is going on. But thank you so much, Mohal, for joining.
yeah. Thanks, Adit. It was a pleasure
Thank
as
you,
always.
everyone. Absolutely. Part three will be there next weekend. Please like, share, subscribe. Follow Mohal on Twitter, social media. I'll be retweeting him as well. Do follow his handle. He'll be tweeting election results out live and some with insights. Send questions his way. He'll be happy to answer them. Send questions my way. I'll be happy to answer them. If I don't know, I'll always call Mohal and tell him to answer on my behalf. But jokes apart, it'll
Sure.
be another fascinating election. We'll be here to cover it. Till then, it's good night and we'll be back soon. Thank you.